Today's lesson is going to completely change the way that you hit your irons. You're going to hit them more solid. You're going to hit them further. You're probably going to hit them more consistently, and I think you're going to hit them straighter as well. And what I'm going to run you through is a really simple three-stage process. And this really completely changed the golf swing. So it's all to do with, I'm going to call it levels. Okay, what you do with your levels, head level, hip level, knee level. And when we look at the best players, the pros, the people that we'd love to play golf like, and we look at the average golfer, we see quite big differences. Now you're going to see some swings on the screen in a moment for some professional golfers. I'm sure you're going to recognize them. And what you'll see is there's a line on top of the head at setup, and you'll see that as they get into their downswing, what have they done? They have all lowered. They've got closer to the ground compared to where they started. Now let's have a look at some amateurs. You can see I've blurred their faces out so you don't know who they are, but have a look at their golf swings. Do we see the same thing? No. We see the same levels. If anything, we sometimes see these golfers go upwards away from the ground. Now, why does that affect strike? Why is that so important when it comes to strike? Well, we can demonstrate that quite simply, and then I'm going to run you through these three stages to help you achieve that. Let me take my setup to this golf ball. And you can see that my club shaft is fairly neutral. I've got a 7-iron here. Now, when we hit irons, especially sort of mid to short irons, what would we love to do? How do we hit them pure and solid? Well, we have to have the club descending, I should say, into the golf ball. We have to have a negative attack angle. And the only real way to do that is to have some shaft lean. So let me take my setup and let me go ahead and move into an extreme setup position. Now, I appreciate this isn't correct, but an extreme setup position where the shaft is leant forward. And look what happens to my head when I do that. It got closer to the ground. Why did it get closer to the ground? Well, think of it logically. Think of the distance between the end of the club, so the sole, and my chest. Think of that distance. Now, as I push my hands forwards, what does that distance do? Does it get greater or does it get shorter? It gets shorter. So if I'm going to have my hands at setup here and an impact here, the club is going to get closer to me. I therefore have to get closer to the ground to offset that. So if you're someone who is trying to get your hands forward, because there's going to be so many of the golfers watching this, you're going to be thinking, Chris, that's me. I'd love to get my hands forwards. You might be like Phil trying to do that. If, as you get to the top of your backswing, in transition, you push and you raise away from the ground, you have got, unfortunately, zero chance of getting that perfect impact condition. If you try to get a good impact condition from there, that is about as good as you can do a dead top. So if you want to get this compressed impact, hands forward, de-lofting the club, squeezing the ball, compressing the ball, you've got to get lower to the ground in transition. So here's the first little exercise I would have you do. You're going to take a setup. You're going to get yourself a normal setup, and I just want you to feel what a really extreme impact position is like, and just feel how your head going down is not a conscious effort. It's not something you're trying to do. I'm not standing here and pushing my head down and collapsing my arms. I'm simply saying, here's my setup, here's my impact, here's my setup, here's my impact, setup, impact, setup, impact. And suddenly what you start to recognize is, yeah, this is where I need to be. Right arm gets a little bit more bent, right wrist gets a little bit more bent, my right knee kicks in, my left leg extends, my hips rotate, and my head goes down towards the ground. I'd love you to feel this. And then from here, with my right hand and my right knuckle, I can squeeze and bend the club shaft. That's me in a position where I can put pressure on the back of the club. That's what the great players do. So this is your first little exercise. Now the second exercise is just learning how to get from sort of the top of the backswing to this position. So I'm going to take a golf club, I'm going to place it across my shoulders, and I call this the sink drill. I love this. Take a setup, and what you're going to do is you're going to make your backswing your rotational move this way. And then what you're going to do is you're going to shift towards the target, so some lateral movement. But as you do that, as you shift towards the target, I want you to sink into the ground this way. Notice how it's one sort of fluid, blended movement. I'm going back and I'm sinking into the ground, and you'll see that as I do that, my head starts to get closer to the ground. Now, effectively, what I'm doing here is I'm building pressure under my lead side, which is great because I can use that pressure in a moment to work out into this really nice high extended position, but it also gives me that slight lowering that we see all the best players do. Think about the bottom of the club. Think about the sole. Where does that sole start? Resting on the ground. Where should it be post-impact? Underground. If we're going to have that negative attack angle, the sole of the golf club will be lower than the ground at some point. How do we do that if we don't have some amount of lowering in our golf swing? So your second little exercise, you felt where impact is, turn, shift, sink, and feel like your levels are going down. Do this at home, in front of a mirror, in front of a reflection, so you can see exactly what you're doing. Brings us on to our third drill. This is what I call the underwater drill. I want you to imagine that at setup, there is a line on top of your grip. That represents the water level. So you could be standing in a swimming pool or a river or a canal or whatever it may be. The water is on top of this grip. And I want you to, in transition and into your downswing, get the grip underwater. So the butt of my club is now underwater. How did I do that? Well, exactly the way that we've just gone through in this video, that second little drill. And from here, I could now get into that lovely impact position. So the underwater drill is to do that, but actually spring up and out and hit some shots. So we go up, grip goes underwater, and I use that pressure that's under my lead side to now push me out into my finished position. And I'm able to strike it really pure and really solid, even though my feelings are pushing up and out this way. I never want you to have the feeling as if you're hitting down or staying down or the golf club is moving down. Through impact, your feelings should be up and away. The only way you can do that is if you've made the right movements, if you've done what those great players do. They have this sinking movement which allows them to push up and away. So many of you are going to have this first movement here and then are trying to force the club down into the ball, and you might have seen yourself have these kind of looks to your golf swing. Very difficult to recover from there. So let me show that drill once more. Set up. There's the water level. Back. Grip goes underwater. And then I spring up and out. And look how good that strike is. I mean, that's a half swing, but it's compressed, it's struck. I landed the club target side of the ball, so I know my attack angle was good, and it felt incredibly compressed and pure off the golf club.